Good morning. Welcome everyone to this knowledge sharing webinar organized by the Internationalizing Vocational Excellence project, EU-funded project implemented by the European Training Foundation. And I think we have a very interesting program ahead of us. But I would like to start also with a short introduction to the Internationalizing Vocational Excellence project and also to the ETF for you who haven't joined any of our webinars before. Let me start by sharing the screen. Now, I think, Willem or Pauline, if you cannot, if it's all right. Okay, great. Thank you. So as said, this is our third webinar as part of the knowledge sharing webinars, which we organize within the scope of the EU-funded project Internationalizing Vocational Excellence. My name is Jolien van Uden and I am the coordinator of the project. But before we move to the project, also a short introduction to the European Training Foundation, ETF. We are an EU agency based in Torino, and our mission is to help transition and developing countries harness the potential of the human capital through the reform of education, training, and labor market systems. And as mentioned, we do this in the context of the EU external relation policies. Where do we work? We work outside the EU with the EU neighborhood and Central Asia. And as you can see here, we are based in Italy, in Torino. And for this project, Internationalizing Vocational Excellence, we also work with EU member states as well as with our ETF partner countries and beyond to really reflect the international dimension of vocational excellence. As the ETF, we started our work on vocational excellence with the ETF Network on Excellence, also called ENE. And at the moment, we started in 2020, and we now have around 344 members. And if you would have time to really look at the slides, you will see that the numbers don't add up to 344, but that is because we are constantly growing, and it's almost a day task to add all the numbers behind each country, but it also shows the interest in vocational excellence from all over the world. So based also on the experience with ENE, where we also had developed ENESAT, a self-assessment tool to reflect on where you are in relation to vocational excellence. We also got the EU-funded project Internationalizing Vocational Excellence, where we really aim to support the international dimension of vocational excellence and to support centers in enhancing their vocational excellence. And this could be already existing centers of vocational excellence, centers that are relatively new to the concept, but also VET providers who have the ambition to become a center of vocational excellence. And as core of the project, we have developed ISAT-COVE, the international self-assessment tool for centers of vocational excellence. And with this tool, you can reflect as a center where you are in relation to the European concept of vocational excellence. But the self-assessment is, of course, not enough. It's a start. It shows you where you are, but then we assume that the centers implementing ISAT-COVE would like to further develop themselves towards vocational excellence. And from that perspective, we are developing additional support for these centers in the term of resources and peer learning activities. And today's webinar is one of them. Here you see a brief overview of ISAT-COVE. I will not go into details today into ISAT-COVE. If you're interested, we have recorded webinars on ISAT-COVE, and I can share a link later on in the chat. But ISAT Cove consists of 3 dimensions: teaching and learning, partnership and coordination, and governance and funding. And each of these dimensions is divided into criteria. And overall, we have 23 criteria, which then again are divided in 577 indicators. This always sounds very overwhelming, but it's a tool that you can adjust based on your context and the aims you have with implementing ISAT Cove. You don't need to select all of them. But for today, I only mention this, and I mention ISAT Cove because it's related to the knowledge packages on which we will focus today. At the start of this second phase of the project, we started with the needs analysis, where we conducted a survey and where we conducted focus group discussions with beneficiaries to see what are priority areas where you would need more support, more resources to further enhance vocational excellence. And here you see the findings from the survey. And in total, we had 138 respondents. And if you see like GF2, GF3, or TL1, that refers to the dimensions of ISAT Cove. So GF is governance and funding, TL is teaching and learning, and PC is partnership and coordination. And you see here that if we look at all respondents, priority area engages actively in the development of local, national, and international skills system, followed by number 3, also about jointly creating and coordinating a skills ecosystem with a strategic approach to innovation, smart specialization, and socio-economic development. Then you see the 3rd place is for teaching and learning 1, skill revision, as provision is relevant and responsive to the labor market and the society, followed by 2 on partnership and coordination. If we ask this question only to VET providers, where we had 77, so you also see that we got quite some responses from the other stakeholders, part of a Center of Vocational Excellence, because just as a VET provider, it's difficult to be a Center of Vocational Excellence. You really need to work in partnerships, which is also the main focus of this webinar, but also the webinar later on in March. But here you see what VET providers set as priority areas. And what you can see here is that it's almost the same criteria, and it mentions top 5, but these are actually 6 because there was an equal score at the end for the 5th place. But you see, if you compare it with the previous one, that they are mainly the same criteria, but in a different order. Because here you see that teaching and learning 1, skill provision is relevant and responsive to the labor market and the society, is indicated as the priority area number 1 for further resource development, followed again, same 2nd place, jointly creates and coordinates the skills ecosystem with the strategic approach for innovation and smart specialization, followed by PC1, collaborate sustainably and effectively with enterprise to design and deliver training programs. And especially today, we will also focus on these first ones. The skills provision is relevant and responsive to the labor market and society, and the collaboration to design and deliver together with enterprise training programs. What we also asked with this questionnaire is the question, where would you already have resources available? And this was interesting because what you see here is that in green, they reflect the top 5 priority areas. But for example, for partnership and coordination 1, about designing and delivering training content together with industry and enterprise, many respondents mentioned that there are resources available. Similarly, we see here for governance and funding 2, which engages actively in the development of local, national, and international skills systems. You see that there are also already many resources, but also, for example, for teaching and learning 1 on making the content responsive to labor market and societal needs, there are resources. So based on this needs analysis, we also concluded that, okay, there are these priority areas where we would need more resources, but maybe it's also about making these resources more easily accessible. And based on these findings, we decided that we would focus on what we have called knowledge packages, where we will provide tips, guidelines based on existing knowledge, where we will bring resources, knowledge resources, existing resources concerning these topics together. And one of the things that really came out of both the survey as well as the focus group discussions is that you would really like to learn from the experiences of others. So in these knowledge packages, we will include case studies of how other centers are showing how other centers are working on these aspects. And that is the basis of the work we will present, or the starting point of the work we will present today, and also during a second webinar, or fourth webinar, I should say, because we had 2 webinars in November to get your inputs as well for these knowledge packages. And so we use this as a basis to inform these packages, and we really aim to bring, to collect, to show to you the available resources, tips, and examples into these knowledge packages. And to introduce these knowledge packages to you, I would like to pass the floor to Pauline, who will also introduce herself.
Yes, thank you, Jolien. Thank you for your clear presentation. Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Pauline van den Bos, and together with my colleague Willem Kleinendorst, we worked in the last months on the development of the knowledge packages. And I will take you with us in the approach and what we did actually. Also from the previous webinars, it seemed we asked you questions. Oh, what would you like to see? What is actually what can help you further in your journey towards vocational excellence? You responded actually quite unanimous. That good practices and inspirational tools would help you further in this journey. I will share my screen. But if you have any questions in between, and if you have any, remarks, or if you would like to add something, please feel free to use the chat function. We will not use Mentimeter or Slido or whatsoever in terms of interactive tools, so you can just immediately write your question in the chat, and my colleague Willem will pick them up, and then we will answer them. Or if you raise your hand, that's fine as well. So now I will share my screen. And it often takes a little bit. But we are patient. It's Monday morning. And there it comes, I think.
We see your screen, but not in presentation mode.
Yeah, that's the part where it gets slow down. I think it's better now, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And now you see the next screen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, we have seen in the previous webinars, and some of you attended these webinars and others not. And if not, that is definitely no problem, because we take you each time with us in our journey, and then we go a step further. But we have seen from the previous webinars, where we showed some good examples as well, that there is no one fixed road towards vocational excellence. It depends on your starting situation. It depends on the context where you're working. It depends on developments in your region, your governance structure, the finance, etc. So there is no fixed road, no one size fits all to say, okay, this is the way you should do it. But somehow there are different stations, I call it now stations, to pass. Because when we speak about collaboration and with partnerships and in achieving vocational excellence, we see that we somehow all have to work with private sector and other stakeholders, because that's the core for achieving vocational excellence. We see also that a relevant education development, that is one of the core elements as well, because together with the partnerships, together with your private sector partners, you develop training or you adapt training that is relevant for the regional needs, private sector needs. So that is very much focused on integration of the labor market needs into your training programs. A third station that we somehow all pass is the innovative training, because if you have your partnerships and if you have designed your training, then the next phase is how to provide this innovative training. So, for example, with work-based training, we have seen that applied research can be of use. So there are all kind of innovative training methods that let you grow actually in your vocational excellence, and that is relevant to provide this vocational excellence training. Because we go from the more traditional setting of VET to the vocational excellence VET. We spoke about the knowledge packages. The knowledge packages should be seen as a sort of website, which will be available on the website of ETF. They're under development, so we cannot yet show them, but we can already say, well, what will be in it. And they will help you with resources. So resources on, for example, how to develop these sustainable partnerships, how to develop relevant training, what could be innovative practices. Are there any ideas to get further in that work-based learning approach, or maybe applied research? This is a thing that is really valuable for your vocational excellence. In these knowledge packages, we focus on two important elements, partnerships and ecosystems. We have two knowledge packages, but I would like to say as well that vocational excellence is definitely not limited to these two elements. But as Jolien showed in the needs analysis, somehow the setup with partnerships, establishment of partnerships, and how to grow from partnerships to ecosystems seems to be one of the most important challenges that you're facing with. So the knowledge packages, they can help you out with these two challenges. We provide you resources in what can you do in concrete steps, and you have to see them, and we cannot highlight it enough, as a sort of inspiration, because good practices and case studies, they're always context related. So the challenge is, what can you take out of it for your own context? And we try to give you inspiration, but it is also up to your organizations to pick the elements that are of use for your situation. For example, we have seen the three stations: partnerships, the development of training, and the provision of training. Well, in these knowledge packages, we highlight for every of these three stations. So we keep the structure of the stations and we provide you resources for inspiration. And that means that could be guidelines, that could be study reports, that could be case studies, assessment tools. So we collect actually resources from existing practices and existing studies, and we bring them together in a thematic approach. In this case, partnerships, development of training, and provision of training. The case studies, actually, that is a very interesting part, and where we come back on later today, because the knowledge packages, they will provide 4 case studies, and there are good practices that show the functioning of vocational excellence and a center of excellence in a sort of 360 degree. So we went to the countries where the case study has taken place, and we have had interviews with the policymakers, of course, with the coordinators of the vocational center, but also with trainers, with students, so that we have a good idea of the functioning of a center of excellence from all points of view. And that's actually very interesting for you, ladies and gentlemen, because then you can actually see what is in it for me and how can it work in practice. Let's jump further into what you can find, because I can imagine that you are very curious. Okay, but if I click on partnerships in these knowledge packages, what can I find there? Well, actually, it helps you with very concrete actions and recommendations on how to set up partnerships and how to establish partnerships. So, for example, here in the beginning, here we say that you could, for example, have main challenges in building sustainable partnerships. First of all, how do you find partners? How do you establish cooperation? But how do I keep them on board, and how do I engage stakeholders? Because we can say, okay, you have to find partners and you have to set up partnerships, but how do you do that? How do you get the stakeholders on board? And most of all, how do you keep them on board during your collaboration? And how do you institutionalize and formalize these collaborations? So what we do actually, we break it down in different concrete steps. And it is not like a checklist that you have to do every step, but it is a sort of inspiration. For example, it starts all within your own organization. Do you have a dedicated team that can work on it? It sounds very basic, but it is one of the essential elements. We have seen that in the case study of the urban greening in the very first webinar, that was the very first start. Start with a team in your organization, drink a cup of coffee together to see what do we actually want to do. Agree on a strategy and objectives, not only in your own organization, but also with the partners that you bring on board. So it is just building on a shared vision, on goals, what's in it for them. So try to find also the added value of the stakeholders. Draw a landscape of relevant stakeholders, who is in your sector, in your region, and in your environment important to bring on board. That's very important to have that in mind. Jolien showed already the NA network for vocational excellence. It could be very good resource and network to find partners and to see how other organizations are doing this. So actually, in a nutshell, we define a lot of actions, concrete actions and concrete steps that can help you further. Well, this is only for the station of partnerships, but we do the same for the station of development of training and also in the provision of training. And we do that for the two knowledge packages. We have one knowledge package on establishing partnerships, but we have also a more advanced knowledge package that goes further into ecosystems. How can you transfer your collaboration to the next level of skills ecosystems? So we guide you step by step through these stations and through these concrete actions to valuable sources for your situation. We support the concrete recommendations with examples, because we said that there will be resources like handbooks, guidelines, assessment tools, study reports. So these are just two examples that you can find in the knowledge packages. Here is a handbook on community-based partnerships, an essential and very interesting handbook on how to create, sustain, and strengthen partnerships. So there will be in the knowledge packages a very short, let's call it a pitch on what you can find there, and of course the link to to the handbook. We use them also from very concrete projects. This is one from the European Center of Vocational Excellence in Microelectronics, also to inspire you in different sector examples. So this is in a nutshell what we will provide and what we will work on in the next coming weeks, and to give you a sort of glance, an idea of what you can find in the knowledge packages. And now, of course, we are very curious if this is something that can help you further. Is this, for example, can this help you in your journey towards vocational excellence? Is it concrete enough? And what could be the most important part of you? What do you miss? So I would like to ask you if you have any recommendations for us, then it would be very valuable. I will stop sharing my screen because then I can see you. And then I would like to, can you, for example, can you type in the chat if you think that these knowledge packages with the information that I shared, if it is helpful for you or not. So you can just type a yes or a no or maybe or I don't know. Just to have a first, well, let's call it a sort of temperature measurement if we are on the right track. So the question is indeed, do you think that these knowledge packages that I just showed you can help you out in your first and your next steps towards vocational excellence? We see already yes, very useful. Okay, especially establishing sustainable partnerships. That was indeed one of the requests from last time, because it seems that a lot of organizations are still having challenges with that, especially not only in finding partners, but also how to keep them on board, how to engage them. Any recommendations? Yes. Oh, sorry, that was Willem. That was your. Yeah, sure. Okay, that is good. Can you also type in the chat which part do you think that is the most useful for you? We have seen there will be case studies, which is a very extensive explanation of 4 good practices. We have the handbooks, guidelines, we have the concrete recommendations. So what could be the most useful for you? And then I can. Yeah, indeed. In generating more awareness on why goals are important, indeed. I think it starts with that, because vocational excellence is not an aim by itself. You do that because you want to tackle and you want to anticipate on certain challenges. And it can be challenges in your region, for your sector, the labor market challenges, maybe a lack of personnel, or there is too much personnel and too little jobs. And so you do that for a specific purpose, and that is something that you have to find. And how can vocational excellence help you out in tackling that challenge? Yeah, indeed. And therefore we definitely have to do some communication strategies. And if someone would like to motivate their reaction, please feel free. Yeah, having toolkits, yes. Yeah, sustainability from Jessica. If you feel free, you can give an an explanation on that as well. Do you mean indeed sustainability in terms of partnerships, long-lasting partnerships, or more in the light of sustainability in terms of greening and environment? Because both of them are very important, because we see, for example, that there are a lot of coves working on the topic of sustainability. Yeah, because that's something that you cannot do alone. You need partners in your environment in order to work on sustainability. Concrete recommendations after using the ISET Cove. Yes, and that's actually something that I did not mention, but we focus with our recommendations as much as possible on the criteria of ISET Cove. So if you have done the self-assessment tool of ISET Cove, you will find recommendations that are quite connected to these elements. So the knowledge packages can definitely help you out if you have carried out the self-assessment tool. Okay, no worries, Jessica, no worries. Okay, and I have a third question. Yes, sustainability on partnerships and changing education. Yes, indeed, indeed. Yeah. So what you do indeed, you bring your vocational training back from the four walls of the institution to a more broader concept where you closely collaborate with private sector and other stakeholders to anticipate the challenges that you are facing. And indeed, therefore, you need sustainable partnerships. And sustainability is very important because we all know that developments in vocational training, it takes, or at least 2, 3, 4 years before you deliver the students. So it is a process that requires a lot of time and patience. Yes. I have another question for you, which is the final question for this discussion session. And that is, do you miss something? Is there something that you would like to see what I did not highlight? It's a very open question, but please feel free, because maybe you have a brilliant idea that we did not thought of, which can be very likely. So if you have an idea that could be an interesting thing to include in our knowledge packages, please feel free to type them here. Yeah, I see the Shuruk has mentioned also mechanisms to initiate coves, parameters that need to be taken into account. How do we define coves within the context of each country? Yes, I think that is a very interesting discussion as well. Yes. Okay, but if there is something that pops up in between, please let us know, because your input is very, very valuable for us to continue with the knowledge packages. We go now over to the next part of our webinar, which is one of the most interesting parts, I have to say, because now we are going to dive into one of these case studies that will be presented in the knowledge packages as well. My colleague and I, we went to Egypt 2 weeks ago, and we had a 360 degrees on a view on how the concept of the applied technical schools, the centers of excellence, work in Egypt. And it is very interesting, because where we see that a lot of initiatives are started and ended as a sort of project, we see here that there is immediately a sort of sustainability from the beginning, a long-lasting partnership. And that is very interesting. So I will now go over to Shuruk, because she is here in our midst, and I'm very happy that you are on board. And Shuruk, do you have are you there?
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, yes, we can hear you and we can see you. Very nice. We're very happy to have you on board.
Thank you
And
so much for the invite.
yes, 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 it's very good to see you here. And as I was saying, first of all, can you briefly introduce yourself, and also the concept maybe of applied technical schools? What is it exactly?
Sure. My name is Shurok Zadan, and I am the CEO and Managing Director of a company called Ta'heel for Vet Skills Excellence. And Ta'heel supports the management and operations of vocational education and training institutions, particularly to allow them to get to the level of international vocational excellence, because this is the trend now within TVET post COVID-19. The concept of applied technology schools began a few years ago as part of Egypt's Ministry of Education and Technical Education TVET reform strategy. And it was really about generating new types of TVET schools that encourage public-private partnerships and at the same time work on changing the perception of how technical vocational education and training is perceived among Egyptian youth in particular, because we have over 60% of youth that tend to enter the TVET learning pathway.
Yes, indeed. And what was the biggest challenge to tackle in the Egyptian vet system? What was actually the main motivation to start with the whole concept of the schools of vocational excellence?
Um, well, in Egypt, technical education schools, we have a lot. However, they are there is a disconnect with regards to the private sector. So there was a lot of supply that was happening. However, it was not really meeting the demand of the different sectors and the labor markets that existed. So one of the key challenges was, how do we get the private sector to be more involved and to create a TVET system that is more demand-led rather than focusing only on supply. And so became the whole initialization of applied technology schools, where the private sector were encouraged to set up technical schools that is of relevance to their sector, of relevance to the type of occupations that they were looking for, where the private sector became more engaged in the development of competency-based curriculums, identifying the type of employability skills that were required for students, and of course, having private sector engagement, I think, is the highest and most important challenge of all when it comes to TVET, especially in developing countries such as Egypt, where education is free of charge. So the private sector was was requested to initiate these partnerships, put in a lot of investment to support infrastructure rehabilitation of these schools, invest in equipment, and at the end of the day, you know, support operations in a manner that would somehow be sustainable.
Yeah, thank you. I think you highlight there a challenge which will probably be faced by many of the partners, that VET delivers students that do not meet the standards and the requirements of the labor markets. So that is actually indeed a reason and a very good motivation to connect with private sector to design and to deliver training programs, innovative training programs. And how does exactly the involvement of industry, private sector looks like in your center of excellence, in your applied technical schools? How does it look like in practice? Where are they involved?
Well, we have two, shall we say, two different channels of involvement. We have the private sector that has invested in setting up a center of vocational excellence in sustainable tourism and hospitality as part of their corporate social responsibility initiative. And though the private sector that is supporting on-the-job training and internships and at a later stage employment of the young people who have chosen this career path. So this model is a little bit unique in comparison to other models that you may find out here under the applied technology schools setup, because here as Tahil and as part of a group of companies that is very much involved in education, we are quite aware of, you know, the long-term return on investment, if you want to say. So when we selected to set up a center for vocational excellence, we knew and we understood the type of investment that we wanted to do, and in which sector we wanted to do it in. So we wanted to make sure that this investment was going to support a sector of economic and social priority for Egypt, and also even the partnerships that we identified in terms of for on-the-job training and for lifelong learning and employment at a later stage. We set a partnership where we are ensuring 100% employability at the end of the day. Both these types of private sector engagement have been very much involved from the beginning of the establishment of this vocational center. So they have been involved in, for example, identifying the types of specializations that we're looking at, involved in validating the competencies, the skills, and the knowledge that is integrated into the curriculums that are taking place, involved in assessing the students and making sure that these students really get a taste of the kind of occupations that they have chosen to venture into from different perspectives and from different angles, so that when these students graduate, they have more than just, you know, the small microscopic angle of the occupation that they're going into.
That's a very interesting angle, because you're saying there's 100% employability. That means that when the student is graduate, he can directly go to the company that is connected with your school. For the company, it means that there is a sort of zero time to job. It can directly be operational because you adapted your training exactly to their needs. And well, that's a very interesting part. And how do you keep them? Because it takes a time before the students are graduated. And how do you keep the private sector engaged in this time during the training?
Yeah, well, we definitely promote on-the-job training or in-company training from the very beginning. So the private sector, as I said, is not only very much involved in the whole curriculum development, but they also sit and plan with us the in-company training that takes place at the different years. So from the moment the student enrolls into the school or into the Center of Vocational Excellence, they are already engaged with the private sector through initial orientation, where we invite the private sector to provide more details about their establishment, about what is expected from the students, what's expected from the parents, what's expected from the teachers. We invite practitioners who are already working with the private sector or in the private sector establishment to come and support the practical training that takes place at the school, as well as, so it sort of diminishes this whole aspect of fear that a student may have when entering these new establishments. The students are always invited to have an overview of the establishment and how everything is linked to each other. It's not just one occupation. When I talk about tourism or when I talk about hospitality, immediately people assume that, it's one or two occupations, but the reality is it's quite cross-cutting across many sectors, as you had seen when you visited the school. The private sector is engaged in assessing and giving us feedback on each and every student that goes for the in-company training that takes place, and we make sure that this assessment takes place. If the on-the-job training is not, in a manner of speaking, supporting what the private sector is requiring, like in some cases, because of the educational plan that comes from the Ministry of Education, they are requesting, say, 1 or 2 times per week. But for the private sector, for this particular occupation, it's not really working for them. So we try to have this agile kind of relationship. So by year 3 and year 2, already the private sector really knows who, this future workforce is and what they are very good at, and how they can, really build on the skills that these students have gained. And by year 2, they are ready to, with whatever contractual agreements there are to take forward.
Yeah, very clear. I saw that there was a question from Christine. Christine, you can open your microphone and ask a question if you want.
Thank you very much. In fact, I've been trying to type in the chat and I couldn't, and I was a little bit, I'm happy that at least now I'm able to communicate. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm calling from Uganda. I just wanted to add to what Sharok was communicating, where she says that in their organization, they are trying to put the issue, they are trying to put up to promote the issue of partnerships in their country. And for us here in Uganda, most of the vocational institutes are operating independently. Yes, we have those bodies that try to bring us together, but you find that they are not really functional. So we train these students, we give them those employable skills. One frustrating thing is that after training them, these youth go back to their home countries, their homes, and they have no connection with the market. So when I got in touch with the the Vocational Center of Excellence, especially when I was answering that assessment tool. I realized that it was very, very important for Good Luck to champion that process of bringing these graduates together in a more organized, on a more organized platform, so that the different employers, the business partners, the funders can have an opportunity to interact with them. Before doing that assessment, I wasn't really very keen about it. But when I did that assessment, when I went through that assessment, that's when I realized that as Good Luck, we had a role to play. And so when you talked about how to find partners, how to establish how to find partners and establishing cooperation with those partners, I realized that that was a very good thing that we really need skills on how to do it. It's enormous, because I also realized we need to really have space where we can have this interaction. We need to have exhibitions where these people can exhibit their skills, so that the interested partners, potential employers, funders can have an opportunity to see what these people are doing, and then they are able to engage them. So I'm excited about, especially when you talked about this one of finding partners and how to establish those operations, and also drawing from what Sharok is discussing. I got excited and I thought I needed to share. And that's where I need.
The connection gets a little bit bad, but we heard your story, Christine, and it was very thank you very much for your contribution. And actually, I feel that you highlight indeed the importance of bringing in private sector in order to connect with the training schools, to deliver graduates that are very, very relevant and have the skills that the employers need. And I think that is another example of that shows the importance of focusing on vocational excellence rather than only on the, well, let's say, more traditional training. Thank you very much. I go back to Sharok, because actually you were saying, and that was that triggered me as well, because of course a company can also say, well, just deliver me students and I will train them myself, because then I have the trainees or the students that are adapted to my specific needs. But the companies, in your case, they don't. They say actually, well, you do the training and you deliver also students that have broader skills than only what they will achieve within the context of that own company. Is that correct? Is that the added value that you bring compared to, well, let's say, to the company training?
So one very important key element that the private sector partners are always looking for when it comes to in-company training and employment is that you are actually going beyond, you know, the skills, the existing skills and the existing competencies that are around there. At the end of the day, partners are looking for, you know, young individuals that are able to deliver deliver what is required for the company itself to be internationally at that international level. So when we, for example, develop our curriculums or our vocational training programs, we look at, international qualifications, and we start. This is really the foundation of what we are always looking for and aiming to achieve. So we look at the international qualifications and we start to integrate the national requirements against these qualifications. This is one thing. The other thing is, because of how, international markets today are always looking for, certain skills that highlight young people who are multitaskers, for example. They're no longer looking for individuals that do small things. They want someone that can carry out a number of tasks and carry it out at this particular level. And I think this is one of the key factors that made for us private sector engagement easier, is that they were able to see the quality of programs that we are bringing forward and teaching these young people. We are integrating very important elements within these programs, like green skills or sustainable development or different languages that are of importance, because they are going to be interacting with so many people beyond just, the employer. They were very much comfortable with the fact that we have this agility in terms of the kind of occupations or specializations that we offer, that we are not, rigid in terms of, okay, these are the only specializations that we want to offer. No, we are happy to offer 1, 2, 3, as long as it is meeting the international market trends, and therefore it is also meeting their employment requirements.
Yes, that's indeed. So that means also that if the company, in this case, for example, the hotel group says we would like to focus more on, for example, digitalization or greening, you can anticipate with your training on these needs?
It's one of the things that we do as Taheel. We actually anticipate market trends. It's a research that we conduct prior to even starting a school or a vocational training institution. It's very important to be able to know, what are the trends? Where are we going? What are the sectors that we need to focus on? Are we supporting our sustainable development goals? And if our sustainable development goals require, digital transformation or greening of skills, then we have to integrate this against the sector and against the occupation, regardless of what the occupation is. We focus a lot on making sure that every single trend is taken into consideration. We review our programs on a regular basis. Every term, we take a thorough review of the curriculums that we provide and the practices that we have integrated, to make sure that we always, one step ahead of what the employer may be requesting. So we definitely do that. Another important aspect that we have in our vocational excellence centers is something that we call student life. And within student life, we further complement additional requirements or competencies that the employer may be looking for, because selection of the employer is very important. And I'm going to build up on something that Christine mentioned, that the students ended up going back to their hometowns, and perhaps they found difficulty in employment. And one of the things we have for example, focused on is making sure that we select an employer that has multiple setups across different governorates to make sure that wherever they go, there will always be an opportunity for these students. We looked at, the sector as a whole. So it doesn't have to be a large scale enterprise. It could be a small enterprise or a medium enterprise. At the end of the day, they still require the same type of competencies and skill requirements. So you are again expanding the opportunities for these students.
Yes, that's a very important thing, because you were saying, okay, we offer 100% employability, but what if you have more students at a certain moment than jobs? Then you have to provide also another opportunity for these students. And at this stage, you offer a variety of skills also beyond the job, actually, so that the students are less vulnerable to labor market and they can navigate themselves as well. Yes, indeed.
Can I also add something, Pauline? One other thing that we also do is that we consider the students themselves. We consider their social background, we consider their economical background, and this, I think, is very important for a country like Egypt, for example, because working in different sectors may not necessarily be of convenience to certain people. And I think this is one of the things that when we tackle gender inclusion, we take into consideration. So we always have to have, what is our plan B? What is our plan C to make sure that this person is fulfilling their dreams and at the same time, feels comfortable enough to be working in this establishment.
Yes, indeed. Willem, I think we have a question in the chat. From Jessica. Jessica, is your microphone working or still not working? Otherwise, I will just mention your question.
Yes, it is working.
Okay, great. So you can introduce your question yourself to Shoruk.
What I was saying is that you have also employees with a growth mindset and looking forward instead of staying fixed in their own profession. Do you understand what I mean?
I think so. Yeah, I think so, Jessica. I think one of the advantages that we have here is that we have this development background. So we've worked on many reform initiatives. We have a very close and collaborative relationship with the government, and we clearly understand what it is that they are trying to accomplish in their reform strategy for technical education and vocational training. And so we bring this and we try to find creative ways of being able to become sustainable and being able to be more engaging with the private sector and meeting all these long-term objectives at the same time. Yeah, it is so important to to always bring in these different perspectives from everyone, from the teachers, from those who are operating on the ground, and from management and so on and so forth, to be able to come up with something that is that can be labeled as international and excellence, and all these very big labels.
Yeah. You show also that it is it's actually a holistic approach. You cannot approach only one part. It is connected with, if you have integrate private sector needs in your curriculum, it means also that you have to, and that brings me to a next subject, that you have to make sure that the teachers are able to teach that. And how did you deal with that challenge? Because I don't want to say from one day to another, but it went, of course, more gradually. But they have to become trainers that are training students in another way than the more traditional knowledge-based way. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, we have how do I put this? Okay, well, first of all, we are required by the government to assign government employees who are teachers in technical education in this vocational excellence. And I think this is an opportunity because you are actually upskilling these government employees themselves and expanding their horizons beyond what it is that they know. And on the other hand, we have made it a requirement that every teacher slash trainer that is within the schools that we manage and operate are actual practitioners. So they are actually working in the field that they are teaching, because this brings on a lot more experience than, for example, giving a teacher a teacher's guide and teaching them, the pedagogy and the giving them whatever tools necessary. They will never be able to transfer whatever it is that they need to the student or to the youth unless they have this hands-on experience. So with these teachers, be it if they're assigned by the government or the teachers that we bring on board who are practitioners from the private sector, we make sure that they are also engaged in the curriculums that we develop, that we get their input and we understand where they're coming from. We have a teacher support program that we roll out throughout the academic year, where there's intensive training that takes place with all the teachers from all our schools. So there is this peer learning component that we integrate regardless of the sector. I think it's very important because it's really all about, how do you get a certain message across to the students. And with that, we have a mentorship program as well, where we bring our teacher support staff to observe the teachers during, the academic year, and to make sure that, they're receiving whatever support necessary on a one-on-one basis, or maybe in a group basis or school-specific basis, to make sure that really, they are fulfilling their requirements in terms of rolling out the proper units, and they are up to date with everything that's happening. In addition, we also invite the teachers to be participating during the on-the-job training, so that they are able to create this linkage between what the students are gaining in terms of experience during their in-company training, and what they're being taught in the classroom or in whichever workshop they are choosing to select.
Yes, thank you. Very, very interesting. I have the feeling that we can talk for hours, what we actually already did. But are there some challenges or ambitions that you would have? What would you like to do to improve? What is your next step? Because it sounds already very it is established and successful, and it works, it functions. But what would be your next step in this, in
I
the
think
growing?
I think that our main challenge at the moment is income generation. And this is because of the existing legislations that mandate that education is free of charge. Therefore, we are not able to gain any fees. And perhaps, of course, that feels into the whole sustainability aspect of how do you maintain something, not only maintain the running and operation of the school, but also maintain it at this level of international excellence, because it's not enough that you achieve this
Yeah.
international vocational excellence, but you also have to figure out how are you going to maintain it all the time throughout. And it would be amazing to be able to create this cross-border collaboration where we are able to host students from other South Mediterranean regions or Africa to come and gain this experience that our students are gaining, and maybe in a couple of years we'll be able to have the income generation component more active, where students will realize that they are not in any kind of school, but rather in a school that is truly international.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a very, very important what you're saying. Also about maintaining the level of quality. We can compare it with the Michelin star in a restaurant. Maybe achieving one is already hard, but keeping it is even harder, because you have to improve, you have to become better, you have to keep up the standards high. So that is indeed a very big challenge. Do you have some key takeaways for our participants? Because of course they are jumping to get something concrete out of your experience. What can they do? What can they take home in order to start with vocational excellence as well?
There are many things one can do, but I think that one of the most important takeaways is, being as agile as uh, the geopolitical circumstances allow, shall we say, where it's not, having this rigidity of certain specializations and not being able to add on. Um, Building on the experience of communities of practice, and looking at what works and what not. That's what truly creates this whole concept of international excellence, that you are taking all these different lessons learned from different peers and different colleagues, and then looking at your existing ecosystem and seeing how you can feed this ecosystem and tailor according to what is really going to work, rather than just copying, copy paste kind of setup.
Yeah, exactly, indeed. Well, thank you very much, Shuruk, for your explanation and your enthusiastic story. It helped us a lot in understanding why are you doing this and how are you doing this, and also your future plans. For all the participants, this case study will be in an more extensive form in these knowledge packages, so you can read the different parts back when you were entering the knowledge packages. Thank you very much, Shuruk. And yeah, let's go over now to your link for the final part of this webinar.
Thank you. I don't know whether there are any burning questions for Sharok at this point.
Not so far, but maybe there will be coming more in the end. There is
Yeah.
one participant that would like to showcase their Center of Excellence at the end if there's time.
Okay, so I will move on and then we can still have some time at the end for either a presentation of the center or some last questions. Let me go back to sharing my screen. But now, oh. Can you confirm, Pauline or Willem, that you see my screen and presentation? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, we see it.
So yeah, I would also like to thank you, Sharok, for sharing your interesting and inspiring example. And I will now go back more to the other things we also aim to do to further support centers who are also aiming to become a center of vocational excellence or aiming to, in general, enhance their vocational excellence, because vocational excellence is not something that you achieve, like what Pauline also said with the comparison with the Michelin star. You need to keep working on it, and you need to keep improving and innovating and finding better ways to keep to stay a center of vocational excellence. And so we aim to offer additional resources that can help you on this journey. And the main entry point to find these resources is on the website of Centers of Vocational Excellence. And here you find the link. I can also later on post the link in the chat, but this is really the entry point to find more information. You will find a description of vocational excellence, the events happening related to vocational excellence, information on the Erasmus Plus calls and projects. There will be the links also to the knowledge packages once they are ready. There's a vocational excellence library, links to guidelines and toolkits, and I will show some of the products we are working on right now and which should be finalized within a month here. And one is our cookbook on vocational excellence, where we use the analogy of pizza baking. And we use the pizza as a recipe because you only need a few but very important ingredients, but ingredients that usually you can find in many different places. And that's, I think, as well why you find pizzas all around the world. We use this to show what kind of key ingredients you will need to work on when working on vocational excellence. And the challenge for us was also to show this as a recipe, as based on the focus group discussions we did at the start of the project, to which I referred before. There were questions about, can you provide us with a roadmap? Can you provide us with a FAQ or with a recipe on how to become a center of vocational excellence? And also earlier in the chat, Sharok, you asked, like, how do we define a center of vocational excellence? And we have, of course, the EU definition, which is also reflected in ISAT-COVE, but it's very broad, as you could see as well, with the 23 criteria and the 577 indicators. But this means that you are able to adjust it based on your context, based on what is needed in your context. We also call this a cookbook on vocational excellence, and not a cookbook on becoming a COVE or a Center of Vocational Excellence, because what a Center of Vocational Excellence exactly is depends on the context in which you are working. But what we aim to do here is to provide tips as a kind of inspiration, to provide examples, to provide stories of Centers of Vocational Excellence. And so in this cookbook, you will find a description of the key ingredients, which you can see here, like teacher development, working in partnership, quality assurance, innovative pedagogy, applied research, and career guidance, and examples of how you could work on different orientations of vocational excellence. So focusing maybe more on digital or on green, on entrepreneurial, on innovative VET or inclusive VET. And we've described the cooking tools because we say, and also Shurok, you were referring to it as one of the challenges, for example, funding. We see this as tools you need for cooking, but you can have basic tools or more modern or innovative, like how do you say, but really very high quality tools, but with the different possibilities, you can still cook a pizza. So here we describe funding, governance, and internationalization. And we also always emphasize that this pizza is not a pizza you bake for yourself. No, it's one you would like to share. So the company you eat it with, the wider ecosystem is very important. So in this cookbook, which we are developing and which we aim to launch in March, we describe, we use the analogy of baking a pizza to describe different steps you can take to work on vocational excellence. But we also would like to illustrate different recipes in different contexts. So we have also the taste of vocational excellence, where we will share with you stories, experiences of 11 centers from 11 different countries. So that will be the international cookbook. I just showed in the overview of the website that we have an e-library of vocational excellence, and this e-library is already available. This is an old screenshot, so let me show. Stop sharing. Oh, and let me show the actual library. So I think you see the library now. I think, yeah, I see you nodding. So I will share the link in the chat. But here is where you can find the e-library. It's on ETF Open Space. And we have now we have exactly 382 vocational excellence resources. And these resources are, we started looking for resources developed by actual COVIS, Centers of Vocational Excellence, but then we have also looked at other actors, also like our own ETF publications and tools, but also from others like CEDEFOP, UNESCO, the VET Toolkit. And we started adding these resources to this e-library. We also really invite you to keep sharing resources with us. Our email address is mentioned here as well. And you can really browse this e-library based on your needs. You can select a resource type, you can select a country, or like one of the excellence themes. And these are based also on the resources selected. You can look for a sector. And if you have used IZOD-COVE and you decide that you want to focus on improving specific criteria within IZOD-COVE, you can also search for the IZOD-COVE criteria. You just need to remember the governance and funding, for example, or teaching and learning, and then the number of the criterion, because they were too long to add as a search filter. And so you could, for example, if you search for digital and you apply the search, you will see that it shows all resources related to digital. So this is our e-library, and we hope that it will keep growing. And for that, we also depend, of course, on you. What we do is to try to make the resources more accessible by adding them all to this library in which you can search. So let me go to my last slide. So we have also 2 more events coming. One is on 12th and the 13th of March, which will be the Internationalizing Vocational Excellence Conference, where we will also present all the knowledge products and all the work we have been doing during the second phase of the Internationalizing Vocational Excellence project. And there will be streaming available during the morning sessions, so you're able to connect with us and also see more of the projects I just showed. And then, of course, on the 17th of March, we will have our 4th knowledge sharing webinar, focusing on the second knowledge package, which focus more on leveraging innovation and socio-economic development by building effective skills ecosystems. So we really hope that you enjoyed today's webinar, but before really closing, I think we still have 5 minutes for some final questions or presentation. Stop sharing. There.
Yes, Aisha?
Yep.
You can
Hi.
speak. Yes, you can speak. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's been a very good sharing from Ms. Shorrock. I wonder, my question is, I'm wondering how you can keep your programs being quite flexible in terms of meaning accreditation process, curriculum review process, in the real actual situation. How do you schedule this? Is it an annual review or biannual review? Yeah, I just want to know the aspect in making sure that the program is being how we can keep it flexible. Yeah, that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Shorrock, are you still there with us?
I am.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you so much, Aisha, for this question. Definitely, it's very important. So, because our student intake comes in from public schools after preparatory, so we are quite aware that there are a lot of things that they need to catch up on. So, for us, when we do our curriculum review, we do it at the end of every semester. And with our teachers and curriculum development team, we go through a very intensive, intense meeting almost on a weekly or every other week with the teachers to see what progress they have made on the different units that need to be completed throughout the semester, and how are the students absorbing the information and the knowledge that is within these programs or within these curriculums. So at the end of every semester, we have an overall preview of where we are, what needs to be done, how can, do we need to shuffle some things around? Do we need to minimize certain content, or maybe some content, like there are some subjects that the students found to be easy. So we intensified the content of these programs. So by the end of the 3 years of high school technical education, you have a very comprehensive curriculum that reflects both the students' perception to or perspective towards how much they're willing to absorb, and the private sector aspect based on the assessments that we are receiving. And in these assessments, they tell us, for example, no, we didn't see this particular competency or this particular skill showcased in the student or whatever. So all these are indicators for us and to review the curriculums. One of the things that makes it easy for us to review these curriculums is that we are green. So we don't print these curriculums, they're all online. And it's a lot of the units within these specializations are supported by blended learning. So there are modules that are self-paced that the students are encouraged to go on a learning management system and, keep on practicing and these interactive modules until they're able to get it. I hope this answers your question.
Yes, thank you very much, Charlotte.
Are there any other participants who would like to share something with the rest, or if there is a final question? No, I don't think so. Jolien, I think closing words?
Yeah, I think I would just like to close with thanking you all for joining us today. We hope the webinar also gave you some inspiration, some new ideas to also continue your journey towards vocational excellence. And we really hope to welcome you again during the webinar on the 17th of March, where we will also show the second knowledge package and where we will have another interesting case study to share with you. And feel free in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can write to us at the email address I shared before in the chat, but which I will put one more time. And we are there and we will try to answer your questions. Thank you very much and have a good day and a good week.